Welcome to hour number 2 of HQ, presented by FanDuel. Getting you caught up on the notable injuries heading into today for Week 13. Sunday night game, Brock Purdy questionable, but is expected to play with that shoulder injury, with San Francisco dealing with plenty of injuries, including Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. Trevor Lawrence should also make his return from a 2-game absence on his non-throwing shoulder in Jacksonville's game later today. All right, back here with Pete Prisco, Darius, Butler, Logan Ryan. I'm Tommy Tran. Let's talk about the Bears, of course, who fired Matt Eberflus after the Thursday night Thanksgiving game day. And it looks like Ryan Poles is going to be fine. Kevin Warren, obviously, the president of the team. Pete, what do you make of what's happening in Chicago right now?
We had to go. I mean, it was a coaching malpractice. That's what that was at the end of the game on Thanksgiving, but also at the end of the Bears game. I mean, it's 2 games, and he had no explanation. He came out and he looked like he had no idea what he was talking about. And I think that only enhanced the fact that they had to make a decision, because they didn't make the decision until after he had his little 10 o'clock press conference. Normally you don't do that. So there must have been a real firestorm in Chicago, and they had to do it. Bottom line is, he didn't do a very good job. He wasn't a good game manager in terms of situational coaching. The players seemed to revolt against him, which is never a good thing. And in the end, it was the right decision to fire him. Now you have to start all over with a new offense, and that's something that Caleb Williams is going to have to, get adjusted to. It's tough for a young quarterback to go 2 years in a row learning a new offense. Unless they decide to keep Thomas Brown, which is highly unlikely. If you bring a new coach in, he will want his own offense.
Quickly, though, with the Poles decision, looks like he's staying on. You okay with that?
Yeah, I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, look, this was supposedly the best situation that any rookie quarterback ever stepped into. Yeah. So if you're the general manager, you sit back and say, I gave him a great situation, and they didn't take advantage of it. So I'm okay with Ryan Poles staying there.
If you guys were a part of this Bears team, Darius, how would you be feeling right now with all the things that are happening right now, and then also hearing that the GM going to be sticking around?
I mean, you came into this year with high expectations. We all thought that Caleb, I think we've seen enough to say, hey, this is a good quarterback. This is a good prospect. He can be a future Pro Bowler, maybe even a Super Bowl winner. And a lot of people did say this is one of the best situations a #1 pick is walking into. But it was kind of questionable for some people, like, hey, maybe you build up in the trenches a little more, maybe get a little better run game and protection around the quarterback. I hate to see the same thing with a young top quarterback going on potentially his second coordinator, second offense already in his second year. You mentioned Thomas Brown. A lot of times teams don't go with that interim head coach. But these last 2 weeks, Caleb Williams has looked like a new quarterback. You know, he's getting the ball out quicker. He's more confident pulling it down and running. Some late game flubs for sure, which starts with the head coach, in my opinion, especially when you have a rookie quarterback. Hopefully he continues to learn. But it's tough. The defense. You brought Eberflus is a defensive head coach. He was a D coordinator before coming there, and the defense hasn't lived up to their billing as well. That was also a part of this, hey, greatest situation a young quarterback is walking into. So defense needs to play better. And you sticking with Ryan Poles, with the GM. Usually that GM head coach is a marriage, so he's got to go out and find a new answer at head coach for this young quarterback. Because Caleb Williams will be the last guy out of that Chicago Bears building. So you got to figure it out with 18.
Look, as a player, I'm happy. Honestly, I'm happy because, listen, you saw Eberflus's record. We got to pull that stat back up. 5-19 in one-score games. Guess what, people? The NFL is usually one-score games. And I've said this on this show multiple times. Coaches win and lose games in football more than any other sport. Well, how they handle 3-19. I gave them too much credit.
Gave a couple wins.
3-19.
That's
road percentage. That's not too good. And in one-score games is not good as well. Coaches have a huge say on timeouts, how to do it, game management at the end of games. There it is, 5-19. And that's on him. That's on the head coach. As the captain of the defense, I can't call a timeout for us, right? That's on the head coach. I have no problem with Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles brought in talent. He brought a quarterback that the Bears haven't had as talented in 25 years, 30 years, right? He brought in a #1 draft pick overall quarterback that everyone agreed is going to be a good quarterback. He paid wide receivers, paid DJ Moore the bag, right? He brought in veteran defensive backs like Kevin Byard to come over there. So he's paying guys, he's bringing in talent. He wants to win. I want to play for a GM that wants to win. They need a head coach that brings some discipline, right? The Tyreek Stevenson situation should have been handled by the head coach. I would bring in a guy like Mike Vrabel. I play for Mike Vrabel. He's as good in in-game situations as anyone, up there with Bill Belichick. As the Titans, we were out coaching Bill Belichick at the end of games to beat him in playoff games. His use of timeouts, his understanding how to get the ball back, certain situations, right? Using the rules. They had to change a rule because what Mike Vrabel was doing on the punt team, right? So I would bring in a Mike Vrabel if he brings the right offensive coordinator in to help Caleb Williams.
Big if.
That's the big if.
Yeah.
It's always...
I got to see who his coordinator is going to be. We'll look at the candidates.
Yep.
But who is those coordinators going to be with Caleb Williams? I've said on this show I'll give Caleb Williams the keys to it. We got to figure out who this coordinator is going to be to help the quarterback grow.
So you brought up Vrabel and you brought up Belichick. A couple of names that are on the short list per our insider, Jonathan Jones. Interestingly enough, though, a couple of defensive-minded head coaches, and, of course, Marcus Freeman from the college ranks there. So what do you think, again, given that you have Caleb Williams on the other side?
Honestly, and I hate saying this as a defensive guy, if I have a young quarterback, a young dynamic quarterback like this, they are playing in Chicago, so that once again you look at the court. Hey, do you want to build it around the passing game and around wide receivers? But hiring a coach with a young quarterback like Caleb Williams, it would be hard for me not to go with an offensive coach, because I know if you bring in a defensive-minded coach, he's going to get an offensive coordinator. You have a good year, maybe two. That offensive coordinator's gone out of the building. Now you have to depend on a new guy, a new voice with this young quarterback, and you have to depend on that quarterback maybe being smart enough and good enough to continually get better and evolve with different voices in his head. If you bring an offensive coach in, like in Andy Reid, for example, obviously there's not a bunch of Andy Reids walking around. But Mahomes, he's had Andy Reid pretty much his whole time there. Ben Johnson hasn't left in Detroit, but whenever he moves on, you got to deal with Goff dealing with a new voice in his head. So that's always the question and the concern with a young quarterback that's trying to figure it out. Do I want to bring in a head coaching candidate who can help this quarterback continue to mature year in and year out in this league?
Well, that's why I think now the move, and I think that's why JJ's pointed out a lot of these guys, the move has been to the overseer, Dan Campbell. Doesn't X's and O's. He's got Aaron Glenn. He's got Ben Johnson. But he oversees it. He instills the culture. So
leader of men.
Vrabel would be that kind of guy. He could bring in that and then hire the right offensive coordinator. You see who name wasn't on that list. Ben Johnson's name wasn't on that list, surprisingly, because Ben Johnson's going to get a head coaching job. But he's exactly what you say, but can he oversee the big picture? Now, talking to people around Detroit, he gets after it now. So he'd be one of those guys that could take care of the big picture. But I'm with you. I think they should hire an offensive coach or a guy who's going to be the big picture guy and brings in the right offensive coach. And who would Mike Vrabel bring in as his offense? That's the question. Like, for example, Detroit, Ben Johnson's going to leave, but they have a guy, he's a quality control coach who's been calling plays sometimes in the preseason, and they're preparing him to be the next guy. You have to get ready for it.